Okay, here we are, still in Relationship Month, and it wouldn't be Relationship Month if I didn't invite one very special guest. And this man has been my relationship coach and mentor for many, many years. He has an absolute wealth of wisdom. In one area, he spent most of his life trying to figure out and going through his own journey and really seeking to master the art of love, relating, and unconditional love for people. So I'm exceptionally privileged to be able to have this gentleman with me today, and I'd like to introduce and say thank you for being here to Rory Kilmartin.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me.
No, always my pleasure, Rory. It's such a special time, and one of the reasons Rory's here is because very shortly we're going to be off on a cruise together with my Master's Circle, where we're going to be spending an entire 8 days just focusing on mastering the art of relationships. And it's such an important area to master. It's a primary area, I guess you'd agree, Rory.
Yep.
Because, for so many people, there's just no guiding principles. There's no rule book that seems to have a functional set of rules or destinations to support growth. We see so much stress, so much pain in an area that really should be beautiful. And I know you've got a lot to share about that, so I think I'll start my first question, if I may.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, what could you share about relationships that you feel would add the most value by putting something into context about where people are right now and what's possible for them?
Wow. Well, thank you. I think the first part to start is it's such a vast conversation. There's just so many aspects of relating, relationships, love, and it's very difficult where to start. So when we spoke earlier, the idea there is no rule book and there is no guidelines. Unfortunately, we have society's version of relationships as our current guideline, and the results are fairly consistent across the board. But beyond that, we're looking at where do we love from? Inside ourselves, in spite of our family or how our family behaved or related or how society says that we should do things. How do we as individuals choose to relate? Where do we choose to relate from? So if you're at home watching this or, and it's Relationship Month and you have an interest in relationships, I think that would be the first question I would be interested in asking, which is, where do you orientate yourself when it comes to relating? And for me personally, I think the first step is that it's a privilege. And until we can be in the realm of it being a privilege.
And a privilege to be in relationship with somebody else.
That of all the people on the planet, this person that you're spending time with is choosing to spend time with you. And all the hundreds of thousands of hours that have gone into their life from their family and their parents and their friends and their teachers and their own efforts to become who they are today, that they want to spend time with you. That for me, that when I get in touch with that, this is the jaw-dropping, gobsmacking thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's almost like I turn to Thea and I think, well, wow, she's essentially rejected 3.5 billion men on the planet to be with me. And when you see it in that level of context, it's like, wow,
wow.
How do you not honor that?
Yeah, it's really moving when you actually stop and take note that whether you're just dating somebody or whether you've been with someone for a few years, whether you're married or not married, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Whoever you are spending time with and experiencing richness or not, but it's still a privilege. And on top of that, their goals and their dreams and their aspirations and their own life journey they're right there inside of that. And I think that's really precious. I think it's really important. And I think that daring to relate to somebody from a place that it's a privilege I think it's a really good start. Even if you're at a stage where the person you're with is driving you up the wall, the next question would be, well, if there is struggle, what's the gift? Why? Why the struggle? Why have we attracted this breakdown, this irritation into our lives? Why have I? Let's speak for myself. Why have I attracted Why have you attracted something that is causing distress or irritation? Like, what's the learning? What's the gift? What's the value? What am I supposed to get? Because what I could probably say is that I could probably line up a dozen people who wouldn't be experiencing the same distress as somebody else. Like, typically it's not a universal thing. Relationship distress is typically a personal thing.
Yeah, and it's obviously very hard when you're in that moment where the emotions have been triggered.
Very.
And the invitation, as you put it at that point, is really to stay in the pocket of that discomfort and rather make it about the other person and what they're doing wrong, and make it about the blame game, which never works, or make it about righteousness, which never works. Then ask yourself, because relationships about your own personal journey of growth that you happen to be experiencing in the privilege of context of being with another. And so, what is the growth there? What do I have to do in order to be able to let go? And one of the previous videos we talked about personal responsibility. We talked about tolerance, not tolerance in the traditional sense of where, I'm going to put up with somebody, but tolerance of your own judgments on other people's model of the world. Because if you can understand that tolerance for you means that I now appreciate that everybody else is going to look at the world differently, I then lose the stickiness of my insistence on how you should operate. Remember, the fastest way to unhappiness is to expect somebody else to do, be, or behave how you want them to do, be, or behave.
Yeah.
And that's a recipe for disaster. But when you're in that emotional context, do you have any phrases that you say to yourself, or anything that reminds you, or any anchor points that really stop you from lashing out, which we usually regret later, or running off old patterns of protection, or say through attack or defense?
Yeah. What's
some of the things that people could really get into in terms of some tools that they think, or some phrases that might help in those moments?
That's a great question. One of the pieces that I deal with my clients with I share with my clients with, is just to try on do no harm as a internal compass.
As in, don't, and that's not just, it's not physical harm.
No, not physical harm. We're talking,
like hit them.
We're talking emotional, spiritual, emotional, psychological, on every level.
Because physical bruises can heal a lot quicker than emotional bruises.
Because our nervous system is easily triggered until we work through that, and the desire for pain relief through the form of being mean, or being sarcastic, or protesting, not doing the things that matter, like that desire for pain relief has to be overcome at some point. It has to be, okay, do no harm. And then, as you said, staying in the pocket, I sort of staying in the discomfort. It's like really understanding that relationships are a crucible for healing. They are...
Oh, that's beautiful. So I say, relationships are a crucible for healing.
Yeah.
And that's, again, all of our own issues that come up within that context.
Yeah.
And we're framing that now as that's our own journey and opportunity to actually heal within, rather than stay wounded and make it about somebody else's fault than why we're wounded. Fantastic.
Yeah. I think, intimate relationships are some of the most difficult, simply because we are the most vulnerable with that person. We have the most at stake. Typically, we invest the most, and that when we're our most vulnerable, the parts of us that need to be resolved will show up. And it's really understanding that life is a growth-centered experience. The demand to grow up, the inexorable demand to grow up, the path to eldership. We're not supposed to die in our 80s with the brain of an 18-year-old. We're not supposed to get to a level and be like, we're 18, I'm an adult now, and I'm going to take my belief system. No, we're supposed to evolve our belief system and evolve our awareness. We're supposed to gather awareness throughout our life. Yeah. I call that the game of life. And inside the relationship game, it's the same thing. And what is inconsistent in us will show up. And it's going to show up more in your relationship with your intimate partner that is your best friend, or your boss, or your employee, or your dog.
Give me an example of inconsistencies. What do you mean?
Well, for example, if you have a wound where you were seriously told off as a child in a disproportionate way, and your nervous system cannot cope with being given any kind of positive feedback, like, hey, can I just talk to you about last night? When you left the room, like, it really didn't work for me, and I'm hoping we can... And you're like, don't talk to me like that. You know, like if you shove away any feedback, just as a simple example, that's going to show up.
You're going to attract more opportunities for that to present itself.
If you can't take somebody saying, hey, would you mind doing that slightly differently? That's going to show up. If you can't apologize, because when you apologize in your family home or in your first job, you got scolded. If your nervous system can't say, I'm really sorry. I was an oaf yesterday, and I'm really sorry I was short with you on the phone call. Must have not been very nice. If you can't apologize, that's going to show up. But the point is, it's the healing. Like inside an intimate relationship, the aspects of you that are dysfunctional, that do not promote loving beautifully, like anything that's inconsistent with deeply exquisite, mature, balanced, divine relating, it's going to show up. It's just how it works. It's how life works. It doesn't matter if it's health, business, relationships, the game of life itself, anything inconsistent with your ability to accomplish, to be whatever your chosen aim is. You want to win gold at the Olympics? It's Olympics month as well, right? You want to win gold at the Olympics, anything inconsistent with you winning gold is going to show up.
Your discipline around your diet that's not there.
You got the wrong coach, you got the wrong sleeping patterns, you got the wrong nutrition, you got the wrong training.
It'll show up.
Or simply just not having enough. It's going to show up. So inside intimate relationships, the idea that it's a crucible for healing, it's like, it's meant to get sticky. It's not meant to be happily ever after. That's the lie.
It's a Hollywood illusion, which I call that's the fairy tale that kids grow up with to sell fairy tale books and then start believing is a possibility.
And as a result, it's far more sensible, encouraged, recommended to have a healthy relationship to breakdowns, to have a healthy relationship to the struggle and the friction and treacle and be like, oh, something's occurring. What are we supposed to learn here? To have a positive, healthy relationship to the breakdown. Most people want to either shove something away or run away. And the discipline is to stay in the discomfort or the pocket, as you said, because that's where the growth is. And when you grow, you take that little step forwards in your evolution and in your own awareness. And soon enough, you'll not be dealing with whatever that level of issue was.
To the next level of challenge.
We do the next level, but they're more pleasant and less disruptive. And the distance between breakdowns expands and the restoring a breakdown reduces. So eventually it can happen in 15 seconds. An upset, a disruption, a breathing, a look, a conversation. Okay, sorry, that wasn't, okay, we're back, bang. John Gottman, the peerless John Gottman, has found in his 30 years of study that the grand skill in relationship, like the number one skill, is healing breakdowns.
Because if you don't, then it's terminal.
It's a disaster.
Yeah, and you're carrying resentments, and then it's a scorekeeping deal. And
you become adversaries, oppositional.
Yeah.
You have to remain allies.
And that's why
I don't have to. Sometimes you're not supposed to.
Yeah,
and then that's your journey.
That's your truth. That's your path.
Yeah.
I love what you say about that when that breakdown occurs, because nothing's all smooth sailing. That's the Hollywood illusion. When that breakdown occurs, if at that point you recognize you have a shovel on your back and you can start digging for gold in that moment, rather than run away, rather than want to hit your partner with a shovel. And look for those levels of awareness to grow and emotionally mature. Yeah,
and you said the two right words there. So the gold is awareness. It's like there's something I'm not seeing about myself. There is a recurring upset, or there is an upset. I'm missing a piece of the puzzle from my life.
Yeah, and that's a hard pill to swallow for people that are addicted to blame. And I talk about different levels of consciousness, different levels of awareness, and the lowest level of the victim mentality, where everything is somebody else's fault. And the tipping point of being able to move forward and take responsibility for your life is the moment you start to realize that blame doesn't work. And regardless of the circumstances, the backstory, the justification, if you can take personal responsibility and let go of blame, you now start to have opportunities for growth. You now have to start to attract different levels of experience that call you to higher levels of love, relationships, learning. But you can't go anywhere if you're looking to blame the other partner, regardless of how addicted to the story of why you justify that they're right.
And it's
they're
so
wrong and you're right.
juicy to be right.
Of course, we're addicted
It's
to being
just
right.
so juicy.
Because it prevents us from feeling the fear that we're not enough, which is the primary fear. And most people go into relationships with that wound still gapingly open and are either attacking or defending to cover it up.
And it's a great example of doing your work. Like, if you do your work and you look at the breakdowns and you try and find, like, what am I supposed to learn from this? Oh, I keep blaming my girlfriend. It's not working. I can't do that anymore. That's an example. So now you get to a point where it's like, I know that blame doesn't work. But before that, you think that you just blame.
Yeah, or she doesn't get me, so therefore I can't explain it with a louder voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, listening. I need to be better at listening or holding a space for her.
So it's not that the entire relationship is about this. This is just a part of it. It's about the juicy stuff. It's about the intimacy and the sensuality and the unapologetic pursuit of pleasure. Like, we're coming from a past where pleasure was not important. Actually, no, pleasure, joy and intimacy, and what shows up in that space is wonder and delight and sparkliness, you know. But along the way, having a growth-centered mindset is critical because it is inherent in our human experience. We are supposed to grow.
And I love what you said about, you know, an 80-year-old person dying with an 18-year-old brain, and unfortunately,
that's not the plan.
No, the only education that we tend to have in this world, in terms of formal education, doesn't address any of that. They address skills for an outdated skills for a modern workplace, but there's no emotional maturity. There's no way to stop people from reaching, you know, a legal age of adulthood, but remaining emotional adolescents for the rest of their life. And you know, it takes, as you said, the will to want to grow, to seek. And some people are so reactive.
And the courage.
Courage being, one of the main tipping points. But some people are reacting to pain because they just don't have a way to navigate that. They stay and wallow, and then get secondary gain from that by, you know, inflating their own sense of identity through being the victim.
Yeah, unfortunately, our society is. At school is informative learning, we're putting information in, but life requires transformational learning. It requires breakthroughs, breaking from this level of awareness to that level of awareness, this belief system to that belief system. You could describe the evolution of our life as a constant series of identifying a flawed belief, creating a new one, then a few months later realizing that one's flawed and creating a new one, like until our final breath. So we're trying, part of the invitation of life is to see the world more clearly. We would like to think that our 75-year-old elder, a true elder that can be trusted by all in the community, that they're going to see the world more clearly. They're going to have a better grasp of the feminine, a better grasp of the masculine, a better grasp of parenting, of money, that their life experiences and their consideration of their life path would have some value for us in our earlier years. And that's because that's the design. And I think that in relationships, in no other place in life that I'm aware of is that more prevalent. Because if you, for example, don't understand listening well enough, because obviously we've not been taught listening at school, forbid, that if you don't really know how to listen to your partner, especially when they're sharing some vulnerability or they're upset, that's going to show up. It's meant to show up because your partner is going to become deeply distressed if you don't know how to listen at various times. So we can't really stress this enough. It's the opportunity of loving beautifully, of having exquisite tenderness and sensuality and all the joy and juiciness and magic and wonder that is available in partnership. But if there isn't a willingness and a courage to take ourselves on, it gets stale.
It gets flat.
We have to survive. We have to create more and more rules to stop the behavior that isn't being transformed. So you can't ever raise your voice. We have to pick away at that rule. And I can't be vulnerable with my partner because he can't listen, she can't listen, he can't listen. So I'm not going to be vulnerable, so I'm going to withhold myself. And there's rules and withholding and protecting and strategizing, and suddenly there's a lack of life. It's an arid Gobi type existence, and we don't want that. We want lush and alive and
passion.
And yeah,
outstanding. And we could probably talk about this.
We
for
could,
another,
yeah.
5 hours, and we're going to be talking about it for quite a while over the next 8 days on a luxury cruise around the French-Italian Riviera. And if you'd like to come join Rory and I on one of our adventures, please send us a message and get in touch. But you can probably start to get a feel why I so love and respect this man, because he has made it his passion for how many years now?
It's my 30th anniversary this year.
30 years.
30 years.
With a single-minded focus of wanting to solve the conundrum of relationships and love. And that doesn't mean that everybody's perfect or everything's going to be, say like the Hollywood fairy tale. No. Relationships are a journey of growth for all parties to essentially evolve themselves to the next level of understanding. At which point, like going to the gym. You manage to lift 10 kilos on the bar, your personal trainer, or the gym, in this case relationship, will add another 10 kilos and you're going to struggle through something else. But it's all about growing and maturing and getting to that last breath with the honor and privilege of having shared it with somebody else to magnify that experience and become the best version of you can be.
That's it. That's the invitation.
Fantastic. Well, we could probably have another chat, I think, at some point. Let's see if we can do a part 2.
Yes, that would be great.
Thank you so much. I mean,
anybody at home, best of luck. Go relationship month. Love is worth it. That's the deal.
Absolutely, love is worth it.